and welcome to This Week in the News, sponsored by peoplesworld.org. With me this evening is our co-editor, Sue Webb, coming to us live from New Haven. Good evening, Sue. How's it going?
Okay, a little rainy.
Great to see you. It's raining here, and I imagine it's a rainy night in Georgia, too. But perhaps not. And also, we got John Wojcik coming to us. John is back in Chicago, our co-editor and responsible for our labor beat. Hey, John, what's up?
And it's raining here, too, after 2 sunny weeks in California. Back to the rain in Chicago.
John, let's get started. Been a lot of talk in the press over the last several days about the Obama administration will get fast-track approval from the Congress. And apparently it looks like they made a little bit of a deal. The White House said the president would not veto it, and he's aligned himself with the Republican majority in the House and the Senate. Excuse me, I got two issues mixed up: Iran and then the TPP. But sticking with the TPP, what's going on? Why has the president sided with the Republicans?
Well, that's a good question, but I think that the answer most likely lies in the mistaken belief that it's the best possible deal they can get given the current circumstances. What they're saying basically is that there are 142 million people working right now in the United States, more than ever before. If you just look at those raw numbers, there was 114 million working when NAFTA, the first trade deal, was signed. So they point to the fact that you have all these jobs that have been created. But we know that these are very low-wage service area jobs. They don't at all make up for the good-paying manufacturing jobs that have been lost because of the trade agreements. So what you have here is a trade-off. Do we get more jobs, even though they're low-paying jobs, or do we not get really anything that? I mean, I think that's the logic, that's the thinking.
Well, the steelworkers are saying, hell no. They had a demonstration in Capitol Hill the other day. Do you think that the steelworkers are right and Obama's wrong?
Absolutely, the steelworkers are right, because the total number of income that the working class is making is down now since the beginning of these free trade agreements. Also, millions and millions of manufacturing jobs have been exported. That's going to be the case with the TPP. And what's even worse is that the TPP includes something that even the other trade agreements didn't include. And this has been forced into it by the corporate interest. There's a board of Wall Street lawyers who can rule on corporate complaints. Corporations can complain and say, "Hey, environmental restrictions are too tough on us. We want to get around them." This board can rule in their favor. There's no other U.S. court or any other court that they go to. It's a very bad agreement all around for working people in this country. It's secret. It will allow future presidents to make trade deals in secret with no checks and balances. That's why you see not only the steelworkers but the entire labor movement and big blocks of progressives in Congress, Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown, all dead set opposed to it, particularly the people who come from states that have been hurt by these trade agreements.
Well, Sue, you've been following foreign policy for a while, and do you think that there might be enough votes in the Congress to defeat this proposal? First question, and then a follow-up. Any sense of where the presumed Democratic front-runner, Mrs. Clinton, might stand on this issue?
I don't know where Hillary stands on the issue. I think as far as the votes in Congress, I think the administration is lobbying pretty heavily, and they do say, they argue that there are labor provisions in the proposed agreement. I don't know. I think I'm not sure what the schedule is for voting on this. Maybe John has a better idea of that. There is a progressive and pro-labor bloc in Congress, but it's not as large as it should be. And I think that a lot of Democrats are inclined to support the president when they can. Not for necessarily bad reasons, but so I think there's that pull.
But this would be a horrible reason. Well, Wojcik, if the vote were to take place tomorrow, what would happen?
Well, if it took place tomorrow, it looks like it would be approved. So more pressure. The pressure has to be kept on until the last possible minute to either vote it down or to radically improve it. That's the point of view of the labor movement, is fighting it right up until the end. But also, they are doing another thing with this fight, and that is recording and taking note of where people stand on this. People who say that they are pro-labor are going to be surprised, because if they vote for this, they may not be getting the support that they would expect to get from the labor movement, or they may be ending up with the labor movement and its allies supporting primary opponents, which has worked on a local level in some places. So there's that involved in it too.
So labor is saying we'll remember in November, and they want. So do you guys think that, you take a look at Iran and the nuclear weapons deal, and now this transatlantic, is this going to hurt the effort to defeat the extreme right next year? I mean, aren't you a little bit worried about that, Sue?
Joe, about the trade deal, the Trans-Pacific Partnership and other trade deals that are in the works, I don't think that they're well understood broadly by the American public. And I mean, we're not opposed to trade. Working class people are not opposed to trade. The trade labor movement is not opposed to trade. I think it's the terms of it that are problematic, but I think it's poorly understood, and I don't know if a good enough campaign has been waged to inform people about it and why it's important. But I think in terms of the 2016 elections, neither that issue nor the other foreign policy issues such as Iran are at the top of most people's agendas.
But what is at the top of most people's agenda?
Their own economic security and future. There's tremendous fear, and unfortunately the far right plays on that, and I think that's a danger.
Wojcik, is it going to hurt Obama next year amongst average working class people?
Is what going to hurt the
TPP, this trade agreement?
The TPP. Well, Obama won't be running, but I think that the TPP, the push for it is going to increase divisions in the coalition that is needed to defeat the ultra-right in the country. So to that extent, it is it's a problem. But the labor movement and its allies, the environmentalists in particular, you notice, who are big on this, because these environmental problems that are created not only overseas but also at home as a result of this are tremendous. So it's people that they're taking a stand on this because it is so critical. It's something that has to be changed, the way we go about trade. Sue mentioned, and I think this is important,
well, we have to keep fighting.
We're not opposed to trade, she said, and what they want to do, you could have a trade agreement that benefits everybody, that benefits all of the countries that are involved, that benefits working people on both sides, but such a trade agreement could only be negotiated if you drastically reduce the profits that big corporations suck out of the trade deal, and that's what they don't want to do.
Good point. Well, while we're on international politics and trade and relations between other countries. Sue, I read in the paper today that the U.S. military, under the directives of the president, they're sending warships outside the coastal waters of Yemen in order to prevent Iranians from supplying the rebellion there. Good thing or bad thing?
Well, I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think that any U.S. military involvement in that region is helpful. The problem with Yemen is the U.S. is now negotiating a landmark, historic agreement with Iran, together with Germany, France, Russia, China, the UK, and the European Union. And by reducing the tensions over the nuclear issue with Iran, it opens up the possibility for Iran to resume its natural role in the world community as a major player. It's a very populous country, with a very rich history and culture, and certainly a major one of the leading oil producers, and it's been a major influence in the region for millennia. Now Saudi Arabia, which is a Johnny-come-lately on the scene, it's only been around for about 100 years or less. It's a major player because of oil, basically, and it's trying to assert itself, and that's what most commentators say. The Yemen, the warfare launched by Saudi Arabia against Yemen, bombing cities in Yemen. It's a poverty-stricken country. It's got a lot of internal conflicts and so on. Most commentators and experts on Yemen say that Iran has not been a big influence there on the the tribal group that Saudi Arabia is targeting, the Houthi. But they're making Iran into a boogeyman. It's part of a power play by the Saudis, and the U.S. should not get involved in it in a way that inflames tensions. I have read that the White House is concerned about the inflammatory nature of the Saudi move and has concerns about it aggravating these extremist groups. But this sending of a warship, it's not clear that it's anything but a negative factor. So I think it would be important for people to let the White House know that the U.S. should be playing a role of peace and working with the United Nations for a political solution in Yemen that and a ceasefire, and get the Saudis to stop bombing. There have been a growing number of civilian casualties. Again, it's a very impoverished country, also with its own very rich history and culture. So it's really kind of a tragedy. So the short answer to your question is no. It's not a good move as far as I can see.
Thank you, Sue. Let's return for a moment to domestic politics. Before we do, if you've just joined us, you're watching This Week in the News. And with me is Sue Webb from New Haven and co-editor John Wojcik from Chicago. Please visit our website at www.peoplesworld.org or check us out on Facebook at peoplesworld.org /Facebook. It is the presidential season, as we just indicated, and Hillary Clinton is off and running, and it looks like Jeb Bush is slightly ahead in the Republican pack. And but I read today that the Koch brothers are supporting Mr. Walker from Wisconsin. Wojcik, is that going to help Walker's campaign? I heard it.
Well, I don't think it will hurt his campaign among the base that automatically supports him. It's certainly not going to propel him into the presidency either. But the more money he can get, the better off. And it's bedfellows. You know, the one thing about the Koch brothers is they're viciously anti-labor, and so they have their little pal there. You remember the online trick that was played on Walker during those big demonstrations in Wisconsin when somebody imitated or pretended they were one of the Koch brothers, and how he dutifully bowed and scraped during that entire phone conversation when he thought he was talking to one of the Walkers, well, one of the Koch brothers. So he's in their pocket, and that's that. He's the right wing sort of has. You know what? I compared this almost like a platter with little different tidbits on it. Walker is the tidbit for the anti-labor fanatics, and then you got the guy in Texas who's the tidbit for the right-wing evangelists, and then you have the other one who's the tidbit for the libertarians. You know, they're trying out all these different little things that they're serving up. All no good, all part of the same platter, but they'll try.
Well,
and they're guaranteed to give you indigestion.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, Sue, let me ask you, of that, all those little different dishes on that platter, which one is your favorite? Who is your favorite Republican?
My favorite Republican.
Yeah. You know?
Well,
Chris
I'd have
Christie,
to ponder that one.
Scott Walker,
It depends
Jeb Bush.
what kind of heartburn you want to have, or what kind of gastrointestinal damage you want, because they come in all flavors, as John has said. I mean, there's a couple that position themselves as less extreme. Jeb Bush being one, and I guess Chris Christie, if he's considered a candidate, is some people consider him less extreme too, compared to Ted Cruz, who's just ignorant extremist. Marco Rubio, who I guess is a little more slick, but also I understand also extreme policies. Rand Paul, I guess, has done very poorly in his initial appearance, and after being announced in his dealings with the press, has not done very well, and I think that's damaged his chances. But all of them are from the right part of the right wing, and they they advocate policies that are really damaging for the 99%. Really damaging, and a very reckless foreign policy.
That's a really important point. Now, the New York Times had an editorial several days ago in which they pointed to the development of what they call insurrectionist politics emerging in the Republican Party, and they cited the House and Senate and the State Assembly in Arizona passing a law signed by the governor which says that they don't have to abide by any law that or any executive action that the president might take that Congress hasn't passed, which is patently illegal, but hey, they don't seem to care. And then Mr. McConnell told countries around the world, you ain't got to pay no attention to the EPA. And then you got that letter that the 48 or 50 Republicans signed saying we'll conduct our own foreign policy, later for the Constitution.
Right.
Is there, Wojcik, a real, sometimes people say that we exaggerate the right-wing danger, but is it really an exaggeration?
No, it's not an exaggeration. In fact, it's a continuation of a policy that they've pursued for a long time. Their attacks on government. Government is government is incapable of running things as well as private business. Corporations can do it a lot better. This is a continuation of that policy, but also historically, This is totally in line with what the extreme right has done time after time in country after country, whether you're talking about World War II, World War I, the 50s, whatever. Go back, the right wing always has this big part of it that plays in this insurrectionist kind of a role. The Nazis did that in Germany. I'm not trying to draw an exact parallel here, but they were revolutionaries. They were running rent strikes in Berlin. They were trying to cripple the Weimar Republican governments in various cities and towns by being the insurrectionists, against corruption, against blaming those governments, blaming progressives for problems that right-wing policies that have been pursued for the last 30 years have really created. So I'm not surprised.
Well,
I don't think it's new.
it's not new, but perhaps it's on a new level. And given that, Sue, how do the Democrats look to you? I asked you, who's your favorite Republican? Are you ready to say who your personal favorite Democratic potential candidate might be?
Well, I love Bernie Sanders. I don't think he's going to be the nominee because he's, too progressive for the centrist and big money elements in the Democratic Party. Elizabeth Warren is very outspoken on issues that are of concern to working class people, but she said she's not running repeatedly, and again, she wouldn't. I think she would have no chance of getting the nomination. Obviously, they could contribute. People like that could contribute to a debate in primaries, but I don't see them as likely candidates. Very unlikely. In any case, even if they were to run. Bernie Sanders calls himself a socialist, and he's very popular in his home state because he's advocated for policies that ordinary Americans, whether they're workers, farmers, or whatever, identify with in a meaningful way. Obviously, Hillary Clinton is seen as the front runner, and many believe she has the nomination locked up. Well, there's a long way to go, and who knows how that's going to go. I think, just going back for a second to the issue of the Republicans and this insurrectionist flavor, racism is a huge piece of it, and so the parallel with the secessionists in the Confederacy pre-Civil War is a very apt one, because these folks would like to bring back, maybe not slavery, but that kind of they have that mentality. They use race. They hated Obama from the moment he was elected in 2008, and they were talking even of assassin. There was really the atmosphere was one of potential assassination, and they've continued with that to this day. So, and the potential candidates in their policies adversely affect working class people and people of color and women. They're very misogynistic as well. So in that sense, obviously Hillary Clinton represents, just in her own persona, a challenge to that misogynism and the women hating, and she has good policies on a lot of social issues. I think she's more hawkish on foreign policy than President Obama, and we'll have to see. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, just what do you think about that? I mean, is Mrs. Clinton looking better and better to you? I mean, now consider, number one, you got this email scandal, and she just erased all that stuff, and where there's smoke, potentially there's a fire, and now you got some questions being raised about foreign donations to their institution, that think tank that foundation that they set up. Are those going to be issues?
Well, You see, first of all, let me just quickly say I have a special spot in my heart for Bernie Sanders because he comes from Brooklyn, which is where I come from. He was in the neighboring neighborhood, Borough Park, grew up there. The other thing is on Clinton, though, I think we have to realize that we have to understand that what I see developing is a major right-wing attack on Clinton. They are going to, you know, that whole big platter full of all those different tidbits. The one thing that unites all those little tidbits on that platter is hatred of Hillary Clinton. And they have been all consistently attacking her, and I think the attacks are going to get worse. We have to see that business about the email scandals, and even the foundation contributions, you know, foreign contributions, to do what? You know, if you're going to pick out a corporation guilty of scandal and corruption, it certainly is not the Clinton Foundation. When you look at what's going on around this, what's going on in this country.
Coal industry.
So you're supporting Mrs. Clinton?
Well, no. What I'm saying is that their strategy, the right-wing strategy, is going to be to use the next is to kill her early on by tearing apart her reputation, destroying and trying to use multimedia approaches to drag her through the mud, because there's a lot of other issues they don't have.
I imagine the more that they do
they
that,
don't have other things, and
the
they fight her in.
increase their prestige amongst women. I tell you what, for me, it's too early. Right now, my favorite candidate is, and he's been my favorite candidate for the last 30 years, is Ron Daniels. He hasn't tossed his hat in the race, but if he does, I'm going to support him. Wojciech, last week you were in L.A. There were big demonstrations in the fight for 15. Is it have we reached a new level? And can you share with us a little bit about your experiences out there in L.A.?
Yeah, we have to, you know, be careful when we say new, you know, a new level. But yes, there's something very different about these demonstrations that were across the whole country. This Fight for 15 movement of the 60 to 100,000 people who were out there striking and demonstrating. It may not have been the largest demonstrations we've ever had, but yet the type of coalition that is behind this, it's really, really and truly a new type of labor movement that's emerging. You saw that where I was in Los Angeles, where thousands and thousands of people from community organizations, traditional unions, civil rights groups, environmentalists, all out there on this $15 an hour issue in large numbers, and not just members of. This is the official leaders of all of these organizations with their big crowds behind them. This is a new thing. This Fight for 15 shows that, and you have unions. I interviewed the leadership of the UFCW out there. That's the biggest private sector union in the Los Angeles area, and they were saying that in order for us to survive, in order for us to grow, we have to lift up everybody. The people we have contracts with, we've got to organize people who want a union but don't have one, and we have to be out here on the street fighting for people who have no representation.
Good point. Good point. Sue, we just have one more minute before we end our program. If I could just change the subject just for a second. In a couple of days it'll be Earth Day. In your opinion, what's the most important environmental issue before us at the moment? And if you were to urge people to do one action to support the environment on Earth Day, what would it be?
Pressure your senators and members of the House of Representatives to support strong climate legislation that curbs the fossil fuel industries, the coal industry and big oil. And by the way, those are big donors to the Republicans. They donate to both parties, but they're big backers. Mitch McConnell, the majority leader in the Senate, the Republican leader, he gets big money from these kinds of folks. So they're trying to cover that up, you know, with this stuff about the Clinton foreign donor. They're the ones who are the big money fraudsters. So anyway, I think to pressure your members of Congress and your senators on action to curb the emission of carbon dioxide, methane, and other things that is changing our climate bit by bit. I just read a book, I know we have to close, about Antarctica. And Antarctica, I didn't know this. Did you know that at one time it was tropical? There were dinosaurs. They found bones of dinosaurs
It must have
there.
been a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Climate does change through natural forces. But what's different now is that we humans are changing the climate in ways that we have no that we have no control over. So the only thing this can endanger our children and grandchildren.
Good point.
I'd say that's the key thing.
And we're going to have to leave it there, remembering that this is the 5th anniversary of the Deepwater Horizon disaster. So let's put tremendous pressure on Congress and on the big business to pass climate change legislation. Thank you very much. We'll be coming to you in another week. Please check out our website, www.peoplesworld.org. Check us out on Facebook. Like us on Facebook at peoplesworld.org/Facebook. And we'll see you next week. John, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Sue, have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Share the story. Share the story on Facebook. Share it on YouTube. Let's help us get the word out. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.